If you were also diagnosed with ADHD late in life, like I was at 50, then you know. At first, there's immediate relief, point of clarity or validation. I can vividly remember walking out of my ADHD assessment with this fresh printout in my hand saying, "You have ADHD." Honestly, I had a spring in my step. I got in my car, got ready to head to work, and for the first time in a long time, I actually felt seen. But about 20 minutes into the drive, out of nowhere, I just broke down in tears. Because right behind that relief came this huge wave of grief. Grief for the life I didn't understand. Grief for the years I spent blaming myself. And grief for the version of me who was struggling and didn't know why. And that's the thing about being diagnosed late in life. It actually explains so much, but it also makes you mourn what you didn't know. So today, I want to talk about what finally made sense after being diagnosed with ADHD at 50 years old. The late diagnosis feeling. Getting diagnosed later in life is kind of strange because it's not just about the future. It makes you reprocess the past. And you do so through this crazy emotional mix of relief on one side, grief on the other, anger on one side, but validation on the other, confusion on one side, and hope for the future on the other. There's relief because suddenly things start to make sense. It's amazing how quickly the puzzle of your life just snaps together. It's almost like a flashback. But there's also grief because you realize how hard you were on yourself when you didn't know any better. And there's anger because you can't help but wonder what might have been if somebody had just noticed earlier. A late diagnosis doesn't rewrite your past, but it does change how you understand it. For me, it helped me start moving towards asking myself less, what's wrong with me? And start asking things like, what was I dealing with that I just didn't understand? It wasn't laziness. One of the biggest things that finally made sense was that I wasn't actually lazy. I could work incredibly hard. I show up in a crisis. I can handle high-pressure situations. But then I would struggle to start a simple task at home. That contradiction makes no sense to me or anyone else. I would think, how can I be so capable in one setting and completely stuck in another? It's actually more of a problem with activation. Starting something can actually feel harder than doing the thing. The dishes piling up. Even a small amount in the sink you'll ignore. And they get more and more. Or those emails that come in and you let them sit in your inbox. Maybe there's paperwork you need to do that you're just not doing. You may need to make a phone call. And for ADHD people, that can be something as simple as making a doctor's appointment. And you put it off and put it off and put it off. Or even returning a simple text. It's not that the task is impossible. It's not even hard. It's that my brain doesn't always shift into gear on command. What I found out was I didn't need more shame. I needed better systems. The all or nothing pattern. Another thing that finally made sense was this all or nothing pattern I was living. I was either fully locked in or completely disconnected. Either the project was perfect or it felt like a complete failure. There was no in between. Either I was all in or I was avoiding it completely. Some examples might be waiting until a deadline creates the pressure you need to actually start. Cleaning the entire house or doing other projects instead of cleaning the one room you need to. Starting a new routine perfectly, then quitting after one missed day or something not going right. Getting obsessed with this new interest, then dropping it out of nowhere. Like a switch turns on and then just shuts off and you don't know why. Before diagnosis, I saw this as a character flaw, something wrong with me, a way in which I was broken. But after diagnosis, I started to try to understand it as an ADHD regulation issue. And if you've ever driven a standard, you know that if you're in first gear and you stay there, the engine revs really fast and you take off from the line fast, but you don't make it very far. And if you continue that way, the engine is just going to fail. And if you try to start while you're in fifth gear, it moves really slow, if at all. Chances are it's just going to stall and not start. The memory and forgetful piece. The forgetfulness was another one. Not forgetting because I didn't care, Not forgetting because people didn't matter to me. The fact is, they mattered a lot. I cared a ton. I cared too much. Forgetting because my working memory was just overloaded and full of holes. Example might be walking into a room and completely forgetting why I'm there. It happens all the time. Forgetting an appointment unless I write it down, and then I have to remember to look at where I wrote it down. Forgetting what someone just asked me in the middle of a conversation. And then the simple things, losing my keys, my wallet, my phone, or important paperwork. These things happen all the time. And then it all comes full circle because a lot of times you remember something at the worst possible time, right at the point when it matters most. And you get that sheer feeling of panic. It's almost like your brain knows. It remembers because it sees the pressure and it drops it right in your lap, right at that point. And the real painful part is that people, a lot of times, they take my forgetfulness personally. They think it's intentional, or they think that I don't care, or I'm not taking what's important to them seriously enough. And when you actually legitimately care deeply, that actually hurts a lot. If you have ADHD, forgetting something does not mean you don't care, but it does mean you probably need external systems because your brain should not be expected to hold on to everything. Again, it's full of holes. It'll lose everything. So what are some things I try to use? Well, I use external sources like calendars, reminders, set to go off with alarms on my watch, maybe some visual cues like Post-it notes or things on my marker board at work, and checklist, utilizing my notes app on my phone and my computer the minute something comes to mind to put it on there. Another thing I do is if there's something I need to do, I put it on my calendar. It's not an appointment. It's a reminder to do something. And I color code it so that I know the difference between a meeting or a virtual meeting or a reminder, so I can visually see it the minute I open my calendar. And that's combined with alarms or notifications that come in early enough that if you forgot, you can still catch up and get it done. And using those types of things, that's not a weakness. It's leveraging technology to help out where your ADHD brain is lacking. Their supports, the emotional intensity. One thing I really didn't understand for a long time was the emotional intensity. I honestly thought that everyone felt the same way and they were just better at handling it than I was. I was really blown away. Feeling things way too fast and really strong and reacting before I had a chance to sort things out and realize what I was actually feeling. Frustration spiked so quickly. Rejection hits hard. And criticism, even the most slight criticism, is bigger than it's intended. Small setbacks can feel like complete failures and are completely overwhelming. I replay conversations in my head all the time after they happen. I'll literally replay them over and over again, looking for those problems, those pitfalls, and those insults or rejections. I'll literally replay conversations in my head minutes and hours and days after they happen, analyzing them for tone, for a statement, and the things I said. The number of times I'll be sitting in my car driving away from a meeting or a conversation, and I think, why did you say that, Bill? Why did you say that? It happens all the time. I used to think I was just really sensitive. I mean, how could I not? I thought everyone else felt the same way, yet I reacted more intensely. Or that I should be like everyone else and seemingly be able to just brush it off. But ADHD can affect emotional regulation too. And here's the thing, the feeling is real, but the size of the feeling may not always match the size of the moment. And that's the part to remember, and one of the things you've got to try to get a handle on. And this understanding gave me a little bit of space to breathe. Instead of immediately believing every intense feeling, I try to pause. Is this the whole truth, or is my nervous system turned all the way up right now? And that's what I'm feeling. And that brings me into the next part, the shame loop. The biggest thing that finally made sense was the shame loop. I've learned that the shame loop is actually a cycle that most of us experience. So let's say I forget something with my memory full of holes, which then I fall behind because I didn't remember it. And now I know I'm behind because I didn't remember it. And I'll start to try to avoid it because it feels bad. I have that shame, that guilt. I just kind of want to put it behind me. Avoiding it clearly makes it worse. And then the shame piles on. It just keeps piling on and piling on. And now the task isn't just a task anymore. It's a task plus guilt, plus embarrassment, plus self-criticism, all layered with a huge heaping helping of shame on top. Some examples might be, again, maybe I didn't answer an email, and now I don't want to answer it today because I didn't answer it yesterday, and things are piling up. Or maybe you received the mail and there's a bill in the mail and you set it aside and you didn't pay it. For a lot of reasons, maybe you forgot or you didn't want to deal with it. But now the bill's late. And I gotta be honest with you, it's the strangest thing. If you don't open the email or you don't open the envelope with the bill, somehow it's not still there. It's very weird. Logically, I know it's still there, but the minute I open it, it becomes a reality. If it's still stuck in the envelope, it's just an envelope on my desk, and it doesn't have the impact. And this can include messy spaces where you really should pick up and clean. You put it off and put it off and put it off until finally one day you go crazy and clean it. Missed deadlines. Again, you forget a small portion of it, but then because you forgot, it spirals down and now it's got so much more things attached to it. So you don't want to do it even more. You just try to avoid it. Like if you stick your head in the sand, it's all going to go away. Or maybe it's something as simple as you said you'd call somebody, or they called you and you're going to call them back, but you didn't call them back for many reasons. Maybe you got overwhelmed, but maybe it was as simple as you forgot. And now it's hours or days. And now you can't call them back because you didn't call them back. I know, it's weird. By the time you finally face it, you're not just doing a simple thing. You're dragging out weeks and months and years of shame into the room with you. And here's the thing, ADHD doesn't make the task harder. Shame makes it heavier. And for me, diagnosis helps separate the task from the shame. Instead of saying, I'm a failure, I could say, this system isn't working for my brain. And that has to be individual to you because not everyone is the same in general and with ADHD. Whatever I was doing wasn't working for my specific brain. And then there's the complete contradiction. Why I could succeed in some areas and struggle in others. It didn't make any sense. This is one of the most confusing parts of ADHD life. People with ADHD are very capable. They can be very responsible and successful. They can lead, create, solve problems, handle high pressure, work in a crisis, and still struggle with the smallest, basic daily task. That contradiction is one of the reasons ADHD gets missed, especially in adults, because people look at you and they say, you can't have ADHD. You're so capable in these areas. My actual doctor, when I approached her and said, I think I have ADHD, I'd like to get tested. Her answer to me was, Bill, I really don't think you have ADHD. You have a master's degree. You wouldn't have a master's degree if you had ADHD. Now, I realize today that's insane because there are people with doctorate degrees in psychology that specialize in ADHD that have ADHD. But you see the point. People confuse the fact that you are successful, that you excel in certain areas, and think that that means you can't have ADHD. And what I realized is that there are certain things that are in play on whether I can or can't do something. Interest helps. If something interests me, I will focus on it. Urgency helps, which is why we're so good in crisis or under high pressure. It really is the best example of this strange contradiction I'm talking about. I am calm in chaos, but chaotic and calm. If things are normal and calm, my brain is on fire, going 1,000 miles an hour, and I'm complete chaos. But you throw me into an emergency or a completely chaotic situation, and my brain just quiets down and focuses on the task. Novelty helps if it's something that's new. You have to also be interested in it, but if it's something that's new, it helps. And then as you're trying to work through things, structure does help. If you can build structure around something, it does help you stay on task. And finally, external accountability helps. This is why body doubling works so well. It's having somebody else there, and they're not necessarily even checking up on you, but they're there and you know they're there, so you're able to do more. But if you can have checks and balances at your work or in your private life, that'll keep you on task. And again, they don't have to be overbearing. You can create a situation where you decide, hey, I'm going to do this thing and I'm going to report back to you. Your friend might be like, okay, you don't really report to me. But if they understand, if you kind of are open with them, they'll be like, okay. And it might help you to know that you actually have to report back to them. And if you don't, they might not care, but you know that you need to, and they'll know that you didn't do it. So basically, if something was urgent, interesting, high stakes, or had other people depending on me, I could often rise to the occasion. I could do it. But if something was boring, repetitive, or vague, and had no immediate consequence, my brain might treat it like it was a wall and kind of push it aside. We don't need to do that. I'm not interested in that. It's not stimulating enough. And I think that's an important word. Now, it comes down to chemical production of dopamine, but in a basic sense, if you want to really understand the difference between this contradiction, one thing is stimulating and one thing is not. And your brain is always going to find a way to go for the stimulating thing. And one of the most surprising things to a lot of people, including myself, was that moment that hit me as I was driving to work after I had my fresh, new, shiny diagnosis. The grief of late diagnosis. I think it's important to talk about the grief, because when you get diagnosed later in life, there can be sadness. You look back and wonder how many times you were misunderstood and how many times you misunderstood yourself. How many times you were trying harder than anyone knew, because only you knew how hard you were trying on the inside. And on the outside, it looked like you were lazy or didn't care. And that's tough because what people were seeing on the outside and interpreting just wasn't true. You cared deeply and you were trying so hard. And you may think about your time in school, whether it's the early years or your years in college. I know I do. And I think back to how hard I struggled. And I really thought to myself, how is everyone else doing so well and I'm struggling? Just to conceptualize the process of learning. I can remember when I was in school trying to look up, and now back then there was no internet. I know I just aged myself, but you guys already know I was diagnosed at 50. Trying to look up how to learn because I was struggling to learn and I didn't know why. So I tried to figure out, well, maybe I just don't know the process of learning. I didn't realize the entire time it was ADHD or at jobs. Maybe you're at your job and you're struggling to do the tasks, or maybe it's some simple guidance given by a supervisor or a coworker, and you take it as an insult, or you take it as shame, and you spiral, and you have conflicts at work, or maybe you leave the job and go to another one when you probably shouldn't have, because the job was a good job that you enjoyed, but the moment carried you through to do things that you probably shouldn't have done. And then there's the relationships you have. You can't help but look back and think, how much did ADHD have an impact on this relationship failing? Because I can definitely look back and see patterns. I'm not saying I can look back and connect the patterns specific to ADHD, but there are definitely patterns that repeated themselves in almost all of my relationships. When I think of that, I can't help but think, is those patterns based on ADHD? And were my actions and my interpretations of the other person's actions based on my ADHD lens? You just can't help but wonder that the heartache and pain you had from all of the breakups, and including a divorce, were unnecessary in my life. Because if I just understood I had ADHD, maybe we could have worked through it. And then there's parenting, and this is not an easy one for me to talk about. My dad, he was not a good guy. He was pretty much absent my entire life, and he pretty much only cared about himself. Candidly, I think he had ADHD. My mom, she tried. She was a single mom and she didn't have much and she struggled a lot. And for whatever reason, I don't mean whatever reason, I'm pretty sure I know. I think that she saw the ADHD in me. I've talked about this in previous videos. And so she was very hard on me because she recognized it. Didn't know what it was, but she saw that I was similar to my dad. And in that aspect, she lashed out at me. She took it out on me. My dad wasn't there, so she took it out on me. So candidly, the one thing I really wanted to be was a good parent growing up. And I honestly don't think I have been. I try, I really do, but I fail. And I think my ADHD has a part in that, whether it's hyper-focusing on something and not paying attention to my kids, or even in a small way. Instead of pulling away and spending a few minutes or a couple hours with them, I continue pushing along on a hyper-focus. My ability to have patience can be taxed based on, how my emotions are, or my ability to have that capacity. Anyways, I just feel like it's had a negative effect, and that's the one thing I didn't want. So I'm trying to improve on it, but it's a tough area for me. And that brings me into my self-esteem. Your ADHD affects your self-esteem based on, you kind of have problems, and so you get criticized. But also, the shame and the self-blame for things comes on way too easily. It comes on when it's not deserved. So it just chips away and chips away at your self-esteem. And understanding that does a lot to start unraveling all the things that have been attached to my self-esteem and weighting it down. But it takes some time to actually get through and build your self-esteem. And grief for the years I spent feeling I was broken. Even up to the day I was driving in the car after my diagnosis and that wave of sadness hit me. I remember thinking to myself, this is proof I have ADHD. It's also proof that I'm actually broken. Now that's not true. I'm not broken and neither are you. But these moments, they do hit you. And here's the thing, relief and grief can exist at the same time. Trust me, I've experienced it. It's okay to feel thankful for that diagnosis, yet still feel sad it came so late. And all the things that impacted in your life that might not have been impacted had you been diagnosed earlier. And what's changed since I've been diagnosed? Well, here's the thing. The diagnosis didn't magically just fix everything, but it changed the way I approach things. Things like less self-blame, more curiosity about ADHD and its impacts in my life, creating better systems, not just society systems, but systems that specifically work for me, more realistic expectations for myself, more self-compassion, and better language for what's actually happening. Instead of asking, why can't I do this? I started asking, what would make this easier? Or what would make this easier to start? Some examples of better questions you could ask yourself are, I'm not going to think about everything else. Can I just make the first step? Can I set a timer for myself? Could I use a checklist or invite a body double? Can I try to remove just one barrier? And can I stop expecting myself to just remember everything? Write it down. But in the end, the most valuable thing my ADHD diagnosis gave me was it gave me the language. The language to finally understand myself. And that language gave me options. Options that you also have. If you were also diagnosed later in life, or maybe you just think you might have ADHD, it's important that you understand that you're not lazy. You're not stupid. You're not broken. You may have spent years trying to force your brain to work in ways that was never built for, and honestly, that is exhausting. It takes us so much more effort to do the basic things that the average person takes for granted. But also, it's important that you understand that ADHD doesn't excuse everything. We still have responsibilities. We still have to work on things. But responsibility without shame is a completely different thing than responsibility with self-hatred attached. You can take responsibility for your life without blaming yourself for having a different brain. For me, being diagnosed at 50, it didn't erase the hard parts. They're all still there. But it did help me understand them better. And that understanding gave me a little more compassion for the person I used to be, for the person I am now. And maybe the goal isn't to become a completely different person after you receive a diagnosis. Maybe the goal is to finally just take the time to understand the person you've been the whole time. And if you were diagnosed later in life, I'd love to know what finally made sense to you after your diagnosis. Let me know in the comments, because someone else reading it might feel a lot less alone to see all these comments from other people that feel the same way. And if you feel like this video helps in some way, please consider subscribing. I make honest videos about what ADHD feels like from my personal perspective, so you don't have to feel like you're the only one. And remember, you're not broken and you're not alone. You're just human. Thanks for watching. Oh, and YouTube seems to think you'll like these videos. Why don't you give one of them a click?